I never thought I'd see them again. My parents, the day they abandoned me, is burned into my memory forever. I was 6, maybe 7. Mom and Dad dropping me off at Nana Helen's with nothing but a worn teddy bear and a backpack full of clothes that were already too small. "We'll be back soon, sweetie." Mom had set her voice a little too high, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "We just need some time to sort things out." "Be good for Nana." Dad added his hand, awkwardly ruffling my hair. They never came back. The first few months were the hardest. Every day, I'd sit by Nana's living room window after school, watching cars go by, hoping, praying that the next one would be them. Every night, I'd cry myself to sleep, clutching that worn teddy bear, wondering what I'd done wrong. Why wasn't I good enough for them to stay? But Nana Helen, she was my saving grace. "You're perfect, just as you are, my darling girl," she'd say, wiping away my tears. Some people aren't ready to be parents, and that's not your fault, but I'm here, and I'll always be here. Nana Helen wasn't your typical grandmother. She was sharp-witty, and as I later discovered, incredibly wealthy. But you'd never know it from how she lived. Our home was a cozy little cottage. She drove an old Volvo, and she still worked as a librarian because she loved the quiet smell of books and the company of stories. The only hints of her wealth were her impressive collection of first-edition novels and the way she'd sometimes casually mention her investments while reading the financial section of the newspaper under Nana's care. I flourished. She nurtured my love of reading, helped me with my homework, and celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. When I won the school spelling bee at age 9, she baked my favorite chocolate cake and invited all my friends over for a party. "That's my girl." She beamed, hugging me tight. "You're going to do great things someday." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Nana and me against the world. She never spoke badly about my parents, but she made sure I knew their absence wasn't my fault. "Sometimes people make choices they can't take back," she'd say wisely. "But those choices reflect on them, not on you." I stopped thinking about my parents, stopped hoping they'd return, stopped caring why they left. I had Nana, and that was enough. She was more than enough. Then came my 16th birthday. Nana threw a surprise party for me at our favorite bookstore cafe, complete with a stack of new releases and a chocolate cake shaped like an open book. She gave me a beautiful necklace, a simple silver chain with a tiny, intricately carved bird pendant. "This is more than just jewelry, Maya," she said, her voice low and serious. "Keep it safe. You'll understand when the time comes." I didn't know then that it would be our last birthday celebration together. 2 months later, Nana Helen collapsed at the library. By the time I got to the hospital, she was gone. "Sudden aneurysm," the doctor said, his face etched with sympathy. It happened quickly, but the pain I felt was anything but quick. It was a slow, agonizing ache that spread through me like a wildfire, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. The funeral was small and intimate, just like Nana would have wanted. Her fellow librarians and a few close friends gathered at the small chapel, sharing stories of her kindness and her passion for books. I sat in the front pew, clutching the bird necklace, trying to be strong just like she taught me. That's when I saw them. My parents walking into the chapel like they belonged there, like they hadn't abandoned their daughter a decade ago. Mom's hair was streaked with gray. Dad had a noticeable paunch, but I'd recognize them anywhere. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of disbelief and anger surging through me. They made their way towards me, faces full of what I supposed was meant to be concern. "Maya, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. I flinched, pulling away. "We came as soon as we heard Dad," said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're so sorry about your grandmother. We know it's been a long time," Mom added, her voice cracking. "But we're here now. You'll come home with us." "Of course." I stared at them, speechless. 10 years of silence, and now they wanted to play happy families. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I finally managed, my voice shaking. "Maya," Mom said, her tone sharpening, a familiar edge creeping in. "Don't be difficult. We're your parents. You have no choice in this matter, actually." A calm voice interrupted. "She has every choice." We turned to see a tall woman in a crisp suit walking towards us, a briefcase in her hand. "I'm Sarah Jenkins, Helen Montgomery's attorney," she said, "and we need to have a conversation about your grandmother's will." My parents' expressions shifted instantly. Mom's eyes gleamed with a barely concealed greed, while Dad straightened his tie, a nervous flicker in his eyes. "Of course," he said smoothly. "We're her only living relatives, after all." Miss Jenkins' face remained impassive. "Let's step into the office. There are some matters that need to be addressed immediately." As we followed her, I felt my hand instinctively tighten around the bird necklace. Somehow, I knew everything was about to change. I just didn't realize how much the church office felt suffocating the air thick with tension. Miss Jenkins sat across from us at a heavy oak desk, methodically arranging papers from her briefcase. My parents flanked me like predators circling their prey, their eyes darting nervously between me and the documents. "Before we begin," Miss Jenkins said, adjusting her glasses, "Miss Maya, would you please show me your necklace?" My parents looked bewildered, but I instinctively reached for the bird pendant Nana had given me. Mrs. Jenkins nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Perfect. Now let me read the terms of Helen Montgomery's will." She cleared her throat and began. "I, Helen Montgomery, being of sound mind, declared this to be my last will and testament." The legal jargon washed over me until one sentence pierced through the fog, making my heart skip a beat. "To my beloved granddaughter, Maya Grace Montgomery, I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, bank accounts, and business holdings currently valued at approximately $47 million. The room erupted. $47 million. Mom shrieked, her face contorted in disbelief. "That's impossible! Helen was a librarian! This is ridiculous!" Dad slammed his fist on the desk. "We're her only children. You can't tell me she left everything to a teenager." Miss Jenkins remained calm. "There's more. The will specifies that Maya is to be legally emancipated immediately, with a trust established in her name. The pendant she wears unlocks a safe deposit box containing further instructions." My head spun. $47 million. Nana Helen, my book-loving, Volvo-driving grandmother, was worth $47 million. This will is dated just last month. Mom sputtered, her voice laced with desperation. "We'll contest it. Maya is still a minor. We're her legal guardians and we have rights, actually." Miss Jenkins interrupted smoothly. "You surrendered those rights 10 years ago." She produced another document. "This is a copy of the abandonment papers Helen filed against you both after you left Maya. You never responded to the court summons, so she was granted full legal custody. You haven't been Maya's guardians for a very long time." I watched my parents' faces crumble. The feigned concern evaporated, replaced by a raw, ugly greed. "Maya, sweetie," Mom pleaded, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You don't understand what you're doing. Let us help you manage this. We're family. Family." The word felt like a bitter taste in my mouth. Where was family when they left me? Where was family for 10 years while Nana Helen raised me? "We made a mistake," Dad chimed in, his voice cracking. "We were young, struggling, but we're here now. We can make it right. Make it right." I stood up, my body trembling with anger. "You're only here because you found out about the money. Did you even care that Nana died? Did you ever care about me?" Their silence was answer enough. Miss Jenkins cleared her throat. "There's one more thing. Helen left a letter for you, Maya." She handed me a sealed envelope. "She asked that you read it alone." I took the envelope and walked out, leaving my parents sputtering behind me, finding a quiet corner in the chapel. I tore it open, my hands shaking. The letter was written in Nana's familiar, elegant script, the words blurring through my tears as I read. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you've just learned the truth about our family's wealth. I know it's a shock. I kept it a secret for many reasons, but mostly to protect you. To let you grow up understanding the value of hard work and kindness, not the allure of money. I watched your parents choose money over love many times. They abandoned you because I refused to keep funding their extravagant lifestyle. They chose wealth over their own daughter, and in doing so, gave me the greatest gift. You. The pendant I gave you unlocks more than just a safe deposit box. It unlocks the door to your future. I've made arrangements for everything. The house is yours. Your college fund is secure, and the family business awaits when you're ready. But most importantly, remember this. You are loved not for your inheritance, but for who you are. The same quiet strength that helped you survive being abandoned has prepared you to handle this responsibility. Don't let your parents manipulate you. They'll try, but you're stronger than they know. You're a Montgomery woman, and we don't break easily. All my love, Nana Helen. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. Even in death, Nana Helen was protecting me, guiding me, loving me. I clutched the bird pendant, a new wave of understanding washing over me. When I returned to the office, my parents were still arguing with Miss Jenkins about contesting the will. They fell silent when they saw me. My mom began, but I held up my hand. I want you to leave. I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Both of you, you're not welcome here. Now listen here. Dad started angrily, but Miss Jenkins cut him off. Should I call security? She asked calmly. As the sole heir and property owner, Maya has the right to have you removed. They stared at me. These strangers who shared my blood, and I saw the moment they realized they'd lost not just the money, but any chance of manipulating me. This isn't over! Mom hissed, her voice venomous, as they gathered their things. You'll regret this. I watched them leave, feeling a strange sense of peace. Settle over me. What happens now? I asked Miss Jenkins. She smiled. Now we visit that safe deposit box. Your grandmother left quite detailed instructions about the next steps. Shall we? As we left the church, I caught a glimpse of my parents in the parking lot, arguing furiously. They'd lost everything today. Not that they ever really had it. They chose money over love once before, and that choice had finally caught up with them. I touched the bird pendant and smiled. Nana Helen had given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me the power to stand on my own, to face whatever came next. And something told me this was just the beginning. The safe deposit box at First National Bank held exactly what Nana Helen promised, and so much more. As Miss Jenkins and I examined the contents, I discovered just how meticulously my grandmother had planned everything inside, where property deeds, stock certificates, and detailed instructions about the family business. Montgomery Enterprises, a company I'd never even known existed. But what caught my eye was a small velvet pouch. Inside, nestled amongst soft padding, was a flash drive labeled for Maya. Miss Jenkins, with a knowing smile, pulled out her laptop and plugged it in. Nana Helen's face appeared on the screen, her eyes twinkling. This must have been recorded shortly before she died. Maya, my darling girl. She began, her familiar voice filling the small room. If you're watching this, then everything has happened as I expected. Your parents showed up at my funeral, didn't they? Trying to claim what was never theirs to begin with. I gasped. Even from beyond the grave, she'd known exactly what would happen. You see, Maya, there's something you need to know about your parents. They didn't just abandon you. They tried to steal everything from me first. Your father, my own son, and your mother attempted to transfer all my assets to their names while I was on a business trip. They thought I was just a naive librarian. They never knew I was the one who built Montgomery Enterprises from the ground up. She paused, her expression hardening. When I discovered their scheme, I gave them a choice. Stay and live modestly while learning the value of hard work, or leave. They chose to leave. They left you behind, thinking I'd come begging them to return. They never understood that by abandoning you, they gave up the greatest treasure of all. Tears welled up in my eyes as Nana continued. I watched you grow into an extraordinary young woman, kind, intelligent, hardworking. Everything they're not. That's why I know you're ready for this responsibility. The video went on, filled with detailed instructions about the company, the properties, and most importantly, the charitable foundation she'd established. The Montgomery Foundation provided educational grants and support to children in foster care. You'll be its new director. Nana's image set her eyes shining with pride. Use our wealth to help others like yourself, Maya. That's our true legacy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mrs. Jenkins introduced me to the company's board of directors, who had all known and respected Nana Helen. They welcomed me warmly, ready to guide me as I learned the ropes of the business. My parents, of course, didn't give up easily. They hired lawyers, tried to contest the will, even attempted to prove Nana Helen was mentally unstable when she wrote it. But she'd been too thorough. Every document was in order, every decision legally sound. Their final attempt came 3 months later. They showed up at the Montgomery Enterprises office, causing a scene in the lobby where her parents' mom shouted as security guards held them back. "She can't keep us out," I met them calmly, dressed in one of Nana's elegant suits, the bird pendant resting against my chest. "Actually," I said, my voice firm, "I can and I will. We'll go to the press. Dad threatened to tell everyone how you stole our inheritance." I smiled, channeling Nana Helen's quiet strength. "Go ahead. Tell them how you abandoned your 8-year-old daughter. Tell them how you tried to steal from your own mother. I'm sure the press will love that story." They deflated finally, understanding they'd lost everything. Not just the money, but any chance of ever having a relationship with me. "Goodbye," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Don't come back." As I watched them leave, I touched the bird pendant, feeling Nana's presence with me. That evening, I approved the first round of grants from the Montgomery Foundation. 20 children from broken homes would get a chance at a better life because of Nana Helen sitting in Nana's old office. My office now. I looked at her photo on the wall and smiled. She'd given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me purpose, strength, and the power to help others. The old Volvo still sits in my garage, even though I could afford any car. I want. It reminds me of where I came from, of the strong, compassionate woman who taught me that true wealth isn't about money, but about how you use it to make the world a better place. Sometimes I even wear Nana's old cardigan to board meetings. The board members who knew her smile when they see it. They understand I'm not just Helen Montgomery's heir. I'm her legacy. As for my parents, I heard they moved to another state, telling anyone who would listen about their ungrateful daughter. But their words can't hurt me anymore. I know who I am. I'm Maya Grace Montgomery, and like my grandmother before me, I choose love over money, kindness over greed, and helping others over helping myself. That's what real family does. The weight of managing Montgomery Enterprises and the foundation is immense, but I face each challenge with the quiet strength Nana instilled in me. I visit the library every week, browsing the shelves, remembering the countless hours Nana and I spent there, surrounded by stories and the comforting scent of old paper. Sometimes I even volunteer reading to children, watching their eyes light up with wonder, just like mine used to. And every night before I go to sleep, I hold the bird pendant, tracing its intricate carvings. It's a reminder of the woman who loved me unconditionally, who saw my worth when others didn't, who taught me the true meaning of family. Nana Helen may be gone, but her spirit lives on in me, in every decision I make, in every life I touch. Her legacy of love, kindness, and generosity will continue, carried forward on the wings of that little silver bird. Story 2. Hannah thought my home-based hobbies didn't warrant residing in the family home, so she recommended that I relocate into an affordable apartment. She told my in-laws that she was fresh from the city and wanted to replace me in the house. They never fully comprehended my lifestyle of working from home. Even my spouse William now appeared to be plotting against me due to Hannah's influence. The fact that they failed to acknowledge that I was the one paying the house's mortgage was discouraging. I was struck by the question, why should I stay with people who made me feel unwelcome? If they wanted me gone so badly, then I would do just that. I was fed by frustration and had reached my own limit. I made the decision to give them responsibility for the mortgage. Having made that decision, I divorced William and moved on, not realizing the difficulties they would soon encounter without me. Amy William is my name. I was 3 years younger than my spouse, although we met at work. Our relationship wasn't your typical office romance. William was employed by my office's janitorial service. When I lost both of my parents in a short period of time, life had struck me a severe blow. After becoming unwell, my father was given a 5-month survival estimate. My mother also passed away from her own health issues throughout his sickness. I had no parents or siblings to lean on after their death, so I had to face life on my own. I would frequently be overcome by the sadness. I cry when I see unexpected things, but especially at work. I miss my sadness with smiles. I was attempting to conceal my suffering while I was absorbed in my thoughts. Beside a window on the day, William and I first really clicked. We had previously exchanged nans, but we had never had a meaningful conversation. William came up to me that day to inquire about my melancholy state of mind. It was surprisingly simple to open up to him. Maybe because he was a bit of a stranger, he was comforted by his empathy. When he found out about my parents, he talked about how close he was to his own parents, which made me feel less isolated in my grief. Our chats, and eventually our connection outside of work, began at this point. William introduced me to his parents when we first started dating, and they were quite polite and accepting of my predicament. Our relationship with his family grew naturally, and we eventually got married without a conventional proposal. We started a new life together after being married, finding a comfortable apartment close to his parents, imagining a day in the future when having children may be part of it for greater freedom. I changed jobs to a remote position. I told William about this big development, but he didn't really understand what it meant. Although he was aware that I worked from home, he was unaware of the specifics of my profession. My income was steady despite the work shift, so I was still able to pay for our living expenditures. William made less money, so we decided he would put it aside. His contributions were little, partly because he had a low-key social life that mostly consisted of going out with friends and myself. It also worked out nicely for him since I was in charge of our money. Among the numerous advantages of working remotely was the opportunity to have leisurely dinners with William, something I was never able to do at my previous position in the past. Cooking had been a straightforward task, but it was eager to please him. Making more natural meals brought me joy, and our shared existence seemed peaceful and satisfying. But after a few years of marriage, an unforeseen issue arose. William's boyhood house was destroyed by a terrible fire, wiping out treasured memories and possessions. His parents were fortunately unharmed, but the loss was profound. They temporarily moved in with us, and I tried to help them just as they had helped me at the loss of my own parents in order to manage my work. I prepared comfort food and took on more housework. Even though we did our best to make them feel welcome, William's parents were quite conscious of their reliance on us and worried about staying too long. Their obvious desire for independence prompted William and I to make a big choice. We had never talked about it directly before, but we would construct a new house to house us all in light of our situation. It felt appropriate. The time seemed ideal to utilize the money I had been accumulating carefully, apart from William's savings, to build a new house that would commemorate the past while representing a new beginning for his parents. Although it had many memories, the old house, a lovely timber building constructed by my great-grandfather, was no longer useful. William's parents were thrilled and appreciative of our choice to construct a new home, which signaled the start of an exciting new chapter in our lives. Her family's perseverance in the face of hardship was demonstrated by this team effort. As William's parents' health issues worsened with age, they made several specific demands for the new home we were going to build, eager to make sure they were comfortable. William suggested a number of extra additions, which naturally increased the cost, much above what we had originally budgeted. We were committed to making it work, in spite of the growing costs. I accepted the improvements for our new house, since I thought they would be beneficial in the long run. At this point, I start to observe a change in the relationship between William and his parents, Tyler and Samantha. He began claiming to be the driving force behind the building of the house, and they often thanked him without acknowledging my financial involvement at all. It appeared that William hadn't told them about the down payment coming from my money, even though the mortgage and ownership documentation were in my name. His parents put pressure on me to express thanks for anything. I believed I had contributed to my efforts, based on his idea claims. Concerned about asking Tyler, Samantha, or William for recognition, I increased my financial contribution, not because I wanted to be thanked, but just because I could. But I was really irritated by William's comments about my alleged obligation to him and his inability to clear up his parents' misunderstandings. I thought he would at least cease downplaying my participation, but I didn't insist he reveal the entire scope of my efforts. Rather, the house construction project appeared to give him more confidence. And to my horror, I found out that he was spreading lies about his job, saying that he had a link to the famous firm I was affiliated with. He did engage with them on business, but the manner he reported it was deceptive. My faith in him was damaged by his habit of deceit and exaggerated self-importance, which also made it harder for me to engage with his parents, because they seemed to support him without conditions. Moving into our new house was supposed to ease these tensions, but as we got situated, the underlying problems got worse. Despite my financial assistance and constant work responsibilities, William and his parents did not comprehend the legality of my remote work and mistook my home-based employment for leisure. As a result, they frequently complained about my alleged inactivity and implied that I should contribute more because of their rudeness. I decided to work for my cafe in order to get away from the incessant insults and find safety outside of our house. This shift at my workplace was a direct reaction to the increasing unease and miscommunication in my own household, underscoring the widening gap between us. I kept pushing William to clear up his parents' misunderstandings regarding my employment. Even so, he might not really understand the nature of my work. My money supported his parents and the rest of our family. All I needed was for him to tell them this basic fact. William, however, downplayed my worries and advised me to disregard their remarks. His parents started treating me like their personal assistant, as a result of the idea that I wasn't working, which made me responsible for all home duties. When I reached my breaking point, I faced them hoping that William would be there to console me. Rather, he chastised me for voicing my opinions and startlingly showed me divorce documents as a warning to live up to their demands. I felt helpless in the face of his unheard-of rage and ultimatum, and I had to grudgingly comply with their requests. Both William and his parents showed a marked lack of interest in me after this episode, so my job was my sole source of solace and a way to avoid the unpleasant realities of my family life. William's sister Hannah opted to stay longer after visiting our new house at this turbulent time. William's parents started complaining to her about me almost immediately, accusing me of ignoring my duties and scolding me for spending too much time alone with my computer. They made fun of my commitment to my profession, questioned its legitimacy, and simply said that I must be a nerd for being so involved with technology, all the while implying that I accomplished nothing worthwhile. I felt as though I was living off their largesse without contributing. As they made assumptions about my previous position, they denigrated me by implying that I had worked as a cleaner for William's business. William's false statements regarding his job stoked this conjecture, resulting in an inverse storyline in which I was portrayed as a guy who was suddenly employed and he was positioned as a high-ranking employee. I became ostracized and ridiculed as a result of this fake world. My circumstances deteriorated when Hannah declared she was leaving her work in the clothing industry to move in permanently, citing a yearning for change and the opportunity to launch a company from our new opulent house. William and his parents enthusiastically embraced her choice, which further alienated me in my own household. While balancing my professional obligations, I was forced to dine by myself and prepare meals for a family that no longer included me at their table. This arrangement continued until Hannah abruptly announced her wish to remain forever on the day of her departure. Her revelation was welcomed by William's parents and William himself, who took delight in the compliments for the house and confirmed my status as an outsider in my own home. She found the house pleasant and seized the chance to start again in her work. There wasn't a room set aside for Hannah, even though she recently decided to live with us permanently. She had been using the guest room before to her declaration, but her house needed more space, and her new permanent status necessitated a more permanent solution. Hannah bluntly declared that she expected me to leave after 2 weeks with us, saying, "I'll live here." She assertively said, "So you should leave," implying that my home-based lifestyle wasn't worthy of a spot in such a fancy house. She implied that I need to look for a less costly place to live somewhere else. Samantha, who supported Hannah, rejected my attempts to defend the quality of my work, leaving me helpless against their unjustified criticisms. The claim that I wasn't productive only because I worked from home was an unfair pressure technique. As William watched the drama play out without speaking up or clearing up the misunderstandings, my frustration grew. So far, I have kept quiet, considerate of William's sentiments. However, the circumstances forced me to publicly state the truth, declaring that the house was registered in my name. I approached Samantha Tyler and Hannah. My money had provided the first down payment, and I was responsible for the mortgage payments. Without William's financial assistance, William's attempt to further denigrate me was a panic attack that swiftly escalated into defensive hostility. He had erected a facade and was desperately holding on to it. Hannah and his parents supported him, calling me the liar, since they mistakenly think William could manage the household's finances. It became evident to me that leaving this poisonous atmosphere could be the only way to keep my sanity intact. I re-examined the divorce papers that William had previously threatened because I was determined to get out of this unworkable situation. At first, it seemed to please him that the house title would be transferred to him because he probably imagined obtaining complete ownership without understanding the responsibilities that came with it. But William's genuine dislike of the hassles of the procedure was shown when it came time to transfer the mortgage into his name. Unaware of the financial and legal ramifications, he never imagined it would be as easy as signing his name. I reluctantly took William, who was unaware of the situation, to the bank and a lawyer for the required consultations. William was preoccupied with his phone during the meeting and didn't pay much attention until it came time to sign the paperwork. He inquired eagerly as to whether this would formally put the house in his name. He enthusiastically signed once I confirmed it, utterly unaware of the significance of his new responsibilities. He would in fact receive the property and its mortgage obligations when the legal proceedings were over. I had carefully laid out the facts several times, but I knew that only the full force of his new position as sole proprietor would expose the entire scope of his misunderstandings and the unanticipated financial commitments. William's response left me in a state of amazement. He joyfully informed Samantha, Hannah, and Tyler of the news, still feeling the radiance of his seeming accomplishment even after the house and mortgage had been transferred into his name. I couldn't understand how they could still believe that William worked for a reputable firm while considering me unemployed. I felt both amazement and a feeling of freedom as I watched everything happen, since I knew exactly what I needed to do next. William arranged a trip to celebrate the divorce after the move, and I was told to leave the house while they were away. They went on an extravagant vacation overseas, expecting me to go without a trace. But I did something about it in those 12 days as I completed the sale of an opulent condo on the top floor of a high-rise building, a location that seemed to have been waiting for me. I sold all the furniture and appliances I had brought into our shared house and packed my personal belongings, approximately $8 million in price. I took advantage of the chance to claim it as mine, as the timing seemed opportune. Although the 3 years of conflict with William's family had worn me down, I was excited about the possibility of beginning over in my condo. My parents left me a sizable fortune, which I prudently managed over the years to greatly increase my wealth without their knowing. In the past, I had hoped to share this windfall with William and retire early, but I chose to keep it a secret, which I now consider to have been a fortunate move. I had learned a hard lesson from the lack of financial caution, which strengthened my decision to conceal my riches. I was able to create a living area that really reflected my preferences. After moving into the unit free from William and his family's influence and criticism, this new house turned into a haven where I could work quietly, surrounded by memories and treasured items, and without anybody interfering with my way of life. I was excited to embrace the peaceful life and try out new pastimes like taking a cooking lesson or going to a yoga studio. Then, surprisingly, William called me when he got back, when he realized that the appliances and furnishings were gone. His voice was full of surprise and outrage. He insisted that they go back without realizing that my money had been used to buy each thing. I therefore had the freedom to sell or relocate them as I saw fit. They wanted to cut off all links to the household that had caused me so much pain, but I didn't feel obligated to leave behind any aspect of my existence. I felt genuinely free in my new condo, prepared to live a tranquil and contented life, far from the chaos of the past. William insisted that I buy the products again after I told him they were already sold. I said that he should have no difficulty purchasing new ones because he works for a large firm. I hung up the phone after that and didn't answer his calls again. I have completely embraced my new life. 2 months after William and his family returned from their joyous trip overseas, I have made friends with my neighbors and taken part in a variety of activities, such cooking courses that a friend who lives directly below my apartment suggested. William called again one day when I was getting home from class. Inquisitive yet wary, I replied asking whether the paperwork was still having problems. His speech echoed the pandemonium of their homecoming, full of bewilderment and dread. The $6,000 monthly loan payback amount irritated him, and he wondered why the debt hadn't been paid off. Despite the bank's explanation, which he had obviously disregarded, He appeared to be totally ignorant of the financial obligations that now rested with him. He showed how little attention he had given during the transfer procedure by expressing shock that the mortgage wasn't paid off. I can still clearly remember sitting next to him, seeing his lack of interest, and now he was desperately trying to find a way out of his new responsibilities. However, it was too late. The mortgage had already been signed in his name. A pivotal moment occurred when William realized he was entirely liable for the loan repayments. It was completely unfounded of him to assume that I would be having difficulties following the divorce. Throughout our marriage, I had overseen our money, making sure we lived well together. As I thought back on the previous 5 months, I wondered about William and his family's lifestyle, probably living beyond their means under Hannah's influence, until the mortgage's reality eventually set in. His situation seemed to me now as though it belonged to a complete stranger, and I became unconcerned about their financial difficulties. I took a moment to explain my current predicament to William. My profitable investments have allowed me to live comfortably in an opulent condo. His phone silence was revealing. His calls stopped after that realization, which made me think he had managed to deal with his circumstances. William unexpectedly reached out once again, rekindling the bond I had assumed had been broken despite our past. I felt detached since our lives had changed so drastically since the divorce. Far from the complications of my former life with him and his family, I continued to concentrate on my newfound freedom and peace. I pondered what pressing issue had compelled William to call me this time. As it happened, there was a crisis. Meanwhile, in the background, their house was being confiscated. His family's worried, desperate voices could be heard in my ears, Samantha Tyler's and Hannah's. William begged for my assistance. With a voice full of terror at their door, an enforcement officer informed them that they were about to be evicted and that the house was going up for auction. When I asked if they had gotten any warning letters, I was honestly shocked to learn that they hadn't. When questioned further, he sheepishly acknowledged that it's possible that these letters were purposefully ignored and left open without any response, as the reality of their circumstances set in with foreclosure imminent, and the entire loan amount demanded immediately. Each member of the family appeared to believe that someone else was handling the loan repayments. I couldn't help but be frustrated by William's seeming lack of optimism. I proposed combining their savings as a possible remedy, but was told the grim truth that this was not an option. While Hannah had quit her job voluntarily, Samantha and Tyler had spent all of their savings on extravagant vacations, relying on their son's future support. Far from the prosperous city life she claimed to lead, she had been fired for embezzling money. Their financial facade broke down, exposing a serious condition. William had spent all of his money living under the guise of a successful job, while his family splurged, all under the mistaken impression that they were financially stable. Their home was eventually seized as a result of the accumulation of these bad choices. Amid all of this mayhem, as if our divorce hadn't broken our emotional and legal bonds, William made the desperate suggestion that we all move into my opulent condo. I responded with firmness and clarity. I declined. Our paths were no longer shared after our divorce, and my new life in the condo was a haven created for my success and independence. Far from the chaos and dishonesty that had defined our marriage, my resolve grew stronger as the story progressed, particularly after overhearing my ex-in-laws Samantha Tyler and Hannah hurling insults at me over the phone. They labeled me a thief, a scammer, and heartless, which only strengthened my resolve to break off contact with them. The bitterness and blame were a direct consequence of their own choices, showing no signs of self-worth or remorse. Eventually, their argument spiraled inward, turning into a cacophony of blame among themselves. At that moment, I chose to sever all ties, quietly ending the call and ensuring no further contact by blocking William's number. A few days later, a newspaper headline caught my eye, detailing a father-son altercation that escalated to police intervention, immediately raising suspicions about William and his family. Confirmation came through a mutual acquaintance, revealing the dispute did indeed involve them, and stemmed from tensions that boiled over after my last conversation with William. The altercation led to their arrests and minor injuries for all involved, along with a police warning. This incident not only bruised their physical well-being, but also tarnished William's professional reputation. As rumors of the fight spread through his workplace, leaving him in a precarious position, following the fight, the house was sold and the family relocated to a dilapidated apartment, a stark contrast to their previous living conditions. Their new life was marred by infestations and neighborly complaints, marking a significant downgrade. Hainoa's history of embezzlement further complicated their attempts to stabilize, making it nearly impossible for her to secure employment. Thus, the family's financial burden fell solely on William, who, despite his efforts to locate me, found his inquiries fruitless. Thanks to the discretion of our mutual friends and the vigilance of my condo's concierge service, this chapter of my life with turmoil and strife felt conclusively close. As I embrace my new existence in the luxury condo far removed from the chaos, my days were now filled with hobbies work and the peaceful solitude of single life. The decision to move forward unencumbered by the past or thoughts of marriage was not just a choice, but a declaration of my newfound independence and contentment. Story 3. This is where my journey starts. My name is Ellie, moving from foster family to foster home while growing up in a tiny town. I eventually found a home with the Thompsons. I had longed for stability my entire life, and they delivered it to me as a priceless gift. Before I went out to college and became the first person in my foster family to live in a major city, my life was rather ordinary. I threw myself into learning languages, concentrating on Japanese. I finally got a job as a translator at an international trade organization. After a lot of hard work, an enormous accomplishment for a girl from a little place like myself, I got my customary black coffee on a typical Tuesday as I entered a little cafe close to my workplace. I saw him at that point, Jack, tall and able to light up a room with his smile. Despite his businesslike demeanor, he appeared at ease while using his phone. I sensed an unmistakable connection as our eyes locked. "The first time I've seen you here. Hello?" As I sat down and drank my coffee, I tried to sound informal. He raised his head. His grin grew, attempting to get away from the pandemonium at the office. "My name is Jack." He held out his hand and said. A spark appeared as I shook it. "My name is Ali. What attracts me to my favorite location, Mr. Escape the Office?" Intrigued, I asked, but he joked coffee and better company. "Apparently." And we clicked right away. After that, weeks passed, weeks turned into months, and a year had gone by before we realized it. We were no longer just having coffee chats. Jack was a lovely cosmopolitan city man. However, we were both aware that things weren't always easy. I was ecstatic when we decided to be married after a year of dating. The Thompsons are the ones that helped to mold me into the person I am now, and I wanted him to meet them. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, my foster parents, were down-to-earth individuals who worked hard and had simple lives. They rented a small, unremarkable apartment that was warm and loving since they had been renovating their home. I told Jack that even if it's not much, it's full of pleasant memories. He nodded, but I saw the expression in his eyes as he looked about the little room. He was obviously uneasy. My parents treated him like a king or queen when we were there for the weekend. Jack, however, was good-natured and constantly looked at his watch. "I want to get back to the city." That Sunday night, the stillness in the van felt oppressive as we made our way home. "You've been silent, Jack. What is going on?" At last, I inquired. He let out a sigh, scarcely hesitated to speak. "We're from different worlds, Allie. But your parents are good." His words were boiling. I struggled to remain calm. "What does that signify?" Simply said, "It's different. This uncomplicated existence is not something I'm used to." In an attempt to get things forward swiftly, he confessed. I bit my lip as I looked out the window and thought about how our lives were different. "I don't really care about stuff, Jack, but we must respect one another's backgrounds." I spoke aggressively. He gave a nod. "Correct. Naturally. Allie, you are loved. That's what counts," he remarked, although it seemed like he wasn't sure we really understood one another. I woke up that night thinking about the straightforward existence I value and the complex world I was entering. It was my time to meet Jack's side of the family, just a few days after our unpleasant visit to my childhood home. His mother Vivian lived in a high-rise apartment in the heart of the city that was opulently decorated and exuded affluence. When we got there, she was waiting for us at the door, completely decked out in expensive clothing, and her flat looked like it belonged in a magazine. "Isn't it, Allie? What do you do to Vivian?" questioned, assessing me as though I were a potential purchase. "I work as a translator at a trade company. I deal with Japanese clients," I answered, attempting to seem assured. She partly smiled and murmured, "Oh, impressive," but her eyes were searching me for weaknesses, what I talked about my foster parents and my history. Her face changed from provincial to essay-inspired. "My Jack doesn't appear to meet that description." Jack jumped right in. "Please, Mom, I adore Allie, who is amazing. We're getting married." "Are you married? What time is this taking place? What plans do you have?" Vivian became a little too intrusive in her tone. "We have a tiny private idea in mind. Only us in Hawaii." In an attempt to emphasize the romanticism, I said. Her eyes almost swelled. "Hawaii? Only the two of you? That won't work if I can't. What will my friends think, even a formal wedding for my only son?" "Calm," I tried to say. "Vivian, it's our day. Without all the fuss. We just want something that feels authentic to us." It was the decisive moment. With a sigh, she announced that the conversation was over, leaving the room. Jack gave me a quick look, his face contrite and hushed. "Let me speak with her. We'll resolve this." Despite the difficult beginning, 4 months passed quickly, and we were in Hawaii, prepared to say I do. Jack and I were to be the only guests at the private ceremony. Naturally, however, Vivian had other ideas. She arrived with a camera in hand, ready to record every second. She seemed to be lurking to make sure she had a lot of content to share online. As he reveled in the sunshine and the happiness of the ceremony, Jack appeared unaware. I made an effort to smile. Leaning toward a whisper, I assumed we would be alone. He squeezed my hand. "Am I being sincere? I apologize. I understand." She simply thrilled. "Let's try to make her day enjoyable." Vivian was constantly on her phone yelling "Smile here" as she buzzed around us. "Oh, my feet will look amazing with this." Instead of feeling like a bride on her wedding day, I felt like a prop in her social media showcase. What should have been our unique moment had become just another of Vivian's extravagant shows. Newlyweds should have had warm, romantic days when they returned home. Slow glances in the living room, breakfast in bed. At least that was how the works began. I was given a beautiful ring by Jack on the day we returned, one that glinted endlessly in the light. His eyes gleamed with pride as he said, "It's been in my family for generations to take care of that ring. It's not just pricey either," Vivian added, looming over us like a black cloud on a bright day. "It's an heirloom." Her reminder made my heart sink a little because it felt more like a warning. Jack and I spent the first few weeks cooking together and stealing kisses, living in our own little world. But then Vivian started dropping by unannounced, like a storm that had settled over our home. It all started one afternoon when the doorbell rang while I was folding laundry. She had that same expression on her face, as though she were going to inspect a military installation. She said, "Just checking in on my favorite newlywed," but her gaze flitted about the apartment as though she were looking for a problem. I tried to be polite, making small talk, even as she wandered into the kitchen, her fingers gliding over every surface. "Allie, darling, do you ever clean? And where are the fresh vegetables? A man needs his greens." Her tan dripped with disapproval. Jack just shrugged it off. Later, when I told him, "She means well, babe. Just try to go with it. Go with it." My frustration bubbled up. "Jack, she's treating me like I'm on trial in my own home." He kissed my forehead casually, as if that would solve everything. "She's lonely. Ellie, let's cut her some slack." But that slack turned into something else entirely. It escalated until one day I came home late from work, riding high on the excitement of signing a major contract with a new client from Japan. That is, until I found Vivian in my living room. An uninvited storm brewing. "I heard you've been spending a lot of time at that office. Late nights?" She raised an eyebrow, her voice thick with suspicion. "Yeah, it's a big project. Lots of new opportunities." I tried to explain, but she clearly had other ideas. 2 days later, she personally showed up at my office, counting the men working with me out loud and loudly, suggesting that could be having an affair with one of them. Without invitation, she barged into my boss's office. I knew him because he was elderly and declared, well, she definitely won't mess with the old man. I was mortified, my face burning as red as a beetroot. I demanded she leave and apologized profusely to my boss and colleagues for the disruption. Thankfully, Mr. Jackson had a sense of humor and just laughed it off, but the damage was done. That night, I lay awake wondering how we got in here. I'd had enough. I cornered Jack in our bedroom, my voice low and tense. "Your mom crossed the line today, Jack. She's accusing me of cheating, and it has to stop." He sighed deeply, weariness etched on his face. "Please just try to get along for me." But getting along increasingly felt like just putting up with nonsense. Things between Jack and me were getting rocky, largely due to Vivian's constant whispers in his ear. Jack had begun to nitpick everything about me. My clothing choices, my work hours. He had never minded before, but suddenly, everything was an issue. "Allie, why do you have to wear that to work?" He frowned one morning as I got ready. "I was simply wearing a blouse and skirt. Nothing fancy, it's professional." "Jack, what's wrong with it?" I replied, adjusting my skirt. "It's too much. You're just inviting comments from all those guys." His tone had a sharp edge, and I realized this was about more than just my outfit. This became a regular occurrence, but it peaked on my birthday. My boss gave me a small gift, just a book with a note that read to my practically daughter. It was an innocent, kind gesture, but Jack blew it out of proportion. "You see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Why is he giving you gifts?" "It's not right, Ellie." Jack was furious when he saw the book. "It's just a book. He's like a father figure to me." I tried to explain, but Jack's eyes were clouded with suspicion. All thanks to Vivian's meddling. The tension at home had become unbearable, so I was relieved to head out on a business trip to a neighboring city. Our company was setting up a new factory, and I looked forward to a break from the drama. The trip went smoothly, and I was wrapping up with dinner alongside our Japanese partners when I noticed shadows lurking near the restaurant. My heart raced as I walked toward my hotel. The dimly lit street made me uneasy, and the shadows crept closer, panicked, as two colleagues to walk me back. As we neared the hotel entrance, the light from the lanterns revealed who was following me, Jack and Vivian. "What the hell, Jack? What are you doing here?" I blurted out, unable to hide my shock. Vivian stepped forward, her expression twisted in anger. "We're making sure you're not up to any trouble. We can't trust you around all these men," she spat. My colleagues stared in disbelief, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. "This is absurd. You're both acting like I'm some kind of criminal." But Vivian wasn't having it. "I'll be telling your parents about this. They should know what kind of woman you've turned out to be." I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Go ahead. They'll laugh you out of town." The ride back was silent. Jack and his mother sat in the front, leaving me alone in the back seat, staring out the window as city lights blurred into streaks of color. Tears filled my eyes. I was married to the man I loved. You know, I felt trapped in a nightmare with Vivian as the relentless specter that wouldn't go away when Vivian actually followed through on her threat and showed up at my parents' place. I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe it when Mom called, her voice trembling as she recounted the situation. "She's here, Ellie," my mother said, tone strained. "She demanded to see your father right away, so I gave her the address to his workshop." My heart sinking as I realized how far this had gone. I felt my stomach drop as my mom spoke. "Dad's at his workshop, where he spends most of his days crafting and creating. He's truly in his element." She continued, her voice steady, but laced with tension. "Your mother-in-law went there. Saw your father in his work clothes stained from the glass." She just scoffed. I gripped the foam tighter, bracing myself for what was coming next. When your father went over to greet her, he apologized for not shaking her hand. His hands were all stained from work. "You know?" She looked at his hands. Ellie made a face and said something awful about coming to this backwater for nothing. My heart sank further as I listened. She said she understands now why you turned out the way you did and just left without another word. "Thanks for telling me, Mom. I need to think about what to do." I hung up, feeling a tumult of anger and hurt swirling inside me. It wasn't long before Vivian made her next move. The very next day, she cornered me in the living room, her eyes cold and judgmental. "Ellie, now I see where you get your manners. Or should I say, lack thereof. Your father is just an ordinary worker." His hands permanently dirtied. What kind of upbringing? What kind of manners could you possibly teach any children? I shuddered at her words. They struck me like daggers. But before I could respond, Jack walked in instead of defending me. He went straight to his mother, taking her in his arms. "Mom, I'm sorry about all this. Ellie's family, they're just different from us." That was it. The last straw. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Different? Is that your way of saying my family isn't good enough for your high standards? My voice broke the hurt too deep. Jack looked at me, his eyes empty. "It's just how things aren't, Ellie. We come from different worlds. So that's it." My voice rose thick with emotion. "If I'm such a disgrace, why don't we just end this? If I'm so beneath you, let's get a divorce." Vivian's eyes lit up almost gleefully. "Well, that sounds like a splendid idea." Jack just nodded passively. "Maybe that's for the best." I spent the night in our guest room, tears streaming down my face as Vivian's every word replayed in my mind each dismissive glance from Jack. The life I thought we were building. It all felt like a lie. The early morning light filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow across the room. As I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, it was time to make some difficult but necessary calls. For some. I-List was my boss, Mr. Jackson, whose kindness had always made the stresses of work bearable. "Mr. Jackson, it's Ali." I started, my voice shaky and facing some personal issues, and need to take some time off. "I can take it unpaid if necessary." "Ali," he replied quickly, concern evident in his voice. "You're one of our most valuable team members. Take a paid vacation, sort things out, and come back when you're ready. We'll manage here." His generosity brought a lot to my throat. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I can't tell you how much this means to me." Next, I dialed my mother, who had always been my anchor in any storm. As soon as she answered, I spilled everything, my words tumbling out in a torrent of emotion. "Mom, it's all falling apart here. I can't do this anymore with Jack and his mom. It's just too much." Her voice was calm and soothing. "Ali, we've been prepared for this call. Your father and I are on our way. Just pack what you need." As I ended the call, I glanced around the room, my eyes landing on the few personal items I had brought into this house, none of which felt like they belonged. I started packing each item, a reminder of the life I thought I'd built with Jack. Vivian appeared at the doorway, her presence like a dark cloud. "Remember, Ali, only take what you bought with your own money. Don't think about grabbing anything else," she said, her voice cold and accusatory. It wasn't long before I heard the gravel crunch under the tires of an old vehicle. Looking out the window, I saw the familiar beat-up pickup truck that belonged to my parents. Jack and Vivian followed me outside, their expressions a mixture of smugness and curiosity as my parents' truck pulled up. Jack scoffed loudly. "Sure, that old thing will even make it back." My father sucked out a quiet strength, emanating from him as he faced Jack without a word. He handed over the divorce papers, his eyes steady and unwavering. Jack grabbed the papers and signed them with a smirk, his mother chuckling beside him, glad to be rid of this mess. We arrived at my parents' home, a large, imposing structure that felt more like a sanctuary now. I spent the next few hours unpacking and trying to settle my nerves. The peace of the familiar surroundings slowly calmed me. That evening, as I sat looking out at the garden, my phone rang. It was Vivian. "Ellie, you need to return the ring. It's a family heirloom, not a parting present." I pulled the phone away for a while, taking a deep breath before replying. "Vivian, the ring was given to me as a wedding present. If you want it, come and grab it yourself." The morning light was just beginning to spread over the horizon when I observed Jack and his mother Vivian from the upstairs window. They paused at the gate, peering up at the mansion as if they had strayed into a fairy tale. Their faces of incredulity were nearly funny. A grin formed over my lips as I observed them from behind the curtain. They seemed so out of place against the backdrop of my vast, neatly maintained front yard. The bewilderment obvious. I moved away from the window, hearing my folks downstairs, and joined them. We shared a knowing gaze before heading outdoors. Calm and composed, my parents strolled by Jack and Vivian without a word. Heading straight toward the garage, they pretended not to see the perplexed expressions from my weird husband and his mother as the garage door flew open, showing 3 sleek, high-end vehicles. I could hear Jack's sudden intake of breath. My father picked a shiny black automobile, and we all piled aboard right before we pulled out of the driveway. At last, Jack was able to speak. "What's all this, Ellie? This residence, these vehicles?" I got out of the car and walked toward them with a sense of peace that hadn't been there for months. "Jack, this is my family's house. My father has many business properties in addition to a glass factory. I was born and raised here." Vivian's expression twisted in bewilderment. "However, your dad..." He was dressed for work. He had filthy hands. The sight of her navy made me grin. "Indeed, Vivian. He was introducing a new range of goods. His firm has a record of becoming involved. Interactive." It doesn't imply that he isn't prosperous or successful. They were left speechless, unable to make sense of the contrast between the lavish surroundings and the picture of the industrious guy they had witnessed. A bunch of neighbors came over at that very time, their faces beaming. "Salutations, Mr. Thompson. We learned about your most recent charity function. What you're doing is amazing. Additionally, we will help you in the mayoral elections." One of them joyfully cried out, while Jack's face contorted with a mixture of guilt in his eyes, flitting between his mother and me. My parents nodded and thanked them, with the unquestionable reality in front of her washing away her previous haughtiness. Vivian appeared as if she had swallowed something sour. I gave Jack and Vivian a final glance before turning back to the car. "You view things a little differently now, I suppose." "Not unkindly," I said. Their shocked and realizing looks attested to the fact that I was finally free of the past, with all of its struggles and heartbreaks. But Jack moved before I could enjoy the moment. He pushed his mother out of the way so hard she stumbled. "You know it's all your fault. Your stupidity pushes her away." He turned to me and yelled at her, his words laced with resentment. His attitude changed entirely. His hands reached out as though he could wipe everything away with a single touch, as he hurried over and attempted to draw me into an embrace. "Listen to me, Ellie, please. Didn't we get along well together? I cherish you." "I do!" His voice was a frantic whisper as he begged. His touch makes me flinch. His dishonesty has long since smothered the warmth we once had. "Jack, stop. Simply stop." I responded forcefully, using all of my effort to push him away. I climbed into the car quickly, without a word. My heart was racing. The garage doors start to close behind us. As soon as my father presses the remote button with a mixture of desperation and incredulity, Jack and Vivian stood there shouting their voices. "Forgive us, Ellie!" With a cracking voice, Jack screamed. "We didn't mean any of it!" Vivian joined in fighting for the honor she had lost. "I was mistaken, sweet Ellie. Please!" I was troubled by the moment's finality as we drove away. But I had a need for closure. A final closure to this phase of my life. I thought this was my father's turn, so I requested him to stop the car when we got to the end of the driveway. Jack rushed toward us, his face beaming with optimism, while his mother followed silently, her former grace giving way to desperation. I removed my wedding ring, held it out, and rolled down the window. When Jack realized what was going to happen, his eyes widened. "Jack, this is the end of it." My voice was steady as I spoke. I tossed the ring out the window after saying that before settling on the plush grass along the road. It sparkled momentarily in the early morning light, with her hand fumbling through the grass. Vivian, however, the opportunist, hurried to where the ring had landed, the agonizing past her. Roll that and the window closing, despite their entreaties. They stood for Dad. "Let's go," silently I said. I returned to the city 2 weeks later and found a new flat that felt more like home than I had in a long time. When I went back to work, Mr. Jackson greeted me with open arms and a kind comprehension that helped me settle back into my routine. Jack tried to get in touch with me many times, each time becoming more frantic. He stated that he had severed his relationship with his mother, pleading for another shot at things that are irreparable once they are destroyed. I banned his number and informed him that this time it was permanent. There was no need for more words.